Hey guys, welcome back. So today's video is going to be all about my blackout sleeve. Now this tattoo is probably the one that I get the most questions about or the most comments about, both positive and negative. I think I've started to get a lot more positive response in the last sort of year or so as they've become a lot more widely accepted and popular. When I first got it, this is in 2018, so I've had it for a couple of years now. I did get quite a lot of controversial comments on it, shall we say, as well as some quite just sort of nasty remarks. It is actually probably one of my favourite tattoos that I have, and I love it. I can understand why a lot of people don't get it or don't like it, but in this video I just wanted to go through with you briefly why I got it and mostly just the actual process of getting it done. First and foremost, I just want to say that my sleeve isn't actually a cover-up. Most people, the first thing they ask me is actually what tattoos am I covering up underneath it? And the honest answer is, I'm actually not. I don't have a sleeve underneath here. I do have two tattoos, however, underneath here. I've got the roses on my hand, as well as having a Marilyn Manson Eat Me, Drink Me heart underneath the anatomical heart on my forearm. The reason that I wanted to cover both of them up, the heart I wanted to get rid of because you couldn't really read it. So it's meant to say eat me, drink me, and it literally looked like it said eat me, drink pie. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't love pie, and it just didn't really make sense, and it just looked quite crap. So I just thought, no. Or people thought it was an Alice in Wonderland tattoo, and I'm not really about that. The roses, the only reason I actually covered those up is because I wanted the moon on my hand, and I wanted a blackout, and I thought the roses wouldn't look very good on that. So I was actually quite sad to see those tattoos, I was sad to see those roses go, but I'm much happier with the result that I've got now. I was also really heavily influenced by the Brutal Black project. If you guys don't know who they are, go and check them out after you've watched this because they're really, really cool. I didn't want to go to them to get it done for a number of reasons really, but mainly just because I'm actually not really very good at meeting new people, and it takes me quite a long time to get round to trusting a new artist. So, you know, I already built up a trust and relationship with the artist that I went to, so I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to stick with this guy. He seems to know what he's doing, so I'll get it done by him, but just tell him that that's my influence, my inspiration for getting it done. He was actually a big fan of the Brutal Black project anyway, so he had no issues with giving me a blackout sleeve, as he'd already done a few of them in the past anyway. Now, as you can see here, I started off just by blacking out the anatomical heart on my arm. So I just literally had that shape in solid black, as well as doing just wrapped around my forearm basically. So when I used to go to this guy, I'd always make sure that I went in for a day session rather than just getting like the odd hour or so, or just going in for a piece. And doing this made it slightly cheaper, and my goal was to just get as covered as I possibly could, as quickly as I could, but with art that I really, really liked, because I was fed up of not really having many tattoos. So rather than me going in and just focusing on an arm, I'd get a piece or two somewhere else on my body and then focus on a little bit of blackout as well. So I felt like I was getting more in the day. Now I know a lot of people would go in and sort of do the whole arm in a couple of days, but I actually split mine into quite a few days. One, for that reason, because I wanted to obviously get covered really quickly, but the other reason was we quickly noticed that I actually swelled up a lot when I was getting tattooed. You'll see later on my swell though, which was hilarious, but yeah, he was almost a little bit apprehensive about tattooing onto my skin that was so swollen, because he did say that it can cause a lot of trauma and the ink might not settle as well, and it can cause more scarring, and for a number of different reasons. So I'm not a tattoo artist, so I fully believed him, and I was just like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to break it down into more sessions and just get different pieces done when I'm coming in. In terms of it healing, it was a little bit different to normal tattoos that I'm used to, because I'm obviously only used to small areas peeling, but this was obviously like a huge, like my whole forearm started to basically peel and itch, and it was such a nightmare. And I just remember the swelling and how much it stung afterwards. And creaming a blackout tattoo for the first time after you started is absolutely horrendous because you just don't want to touch it. I remember I got my girlfriend to do it for me the first time because I just really didn't want to touch it. But after a couple of weeks, once it was healed, I went back, and that's when I got my hand filled to here. So I originally kept the 2 roses in my hand, and that was just because I really liked them, so I thought, well, why not keep them until I get rid of my finger tattoos. It didn't actually look very good with just having the rosebuds in there, but that was something that I did for about 3 weeks, so, you know, it's just one of those things that I decided to do at the time. But you can't see them underneath, so it didn't really matter that I decided to do it like that. Once he blacked out this part of my hand, I was surprised at how much that swelled up as well, because you couldn't actually see the definition on my knuckles anymore, which was quite funny because I've obviously never had like a fat hand before. But yeah, I was also surprised it didn't really hurt as much as I thought it would. I thought hand tattoos would be really, really bad, but it really wasn't that bad. The elbow, which I did on the same day, was so much worse. Like, you can see my swellbow was absolutely ridiculous, and this video is actually taken after I'd had ice on it because I thought this is too funny just to not get a video of, so I'm really glad I did that at the time. But yeah, I was really surprised at the elbow, and I was also surprised at the positioning. I don't know if any of you guys have had it done or had any tattoo on your elbow, but I had to sort of lean backwards and sort of lean like that, which is really awkward, and he sort of stretched over my elbow and shaded like that. And the noise is disgusting. Like, you can hear, it sounds like there's like scraping away at your bone, and to be honest, the noise was a lot worse than the feeling. But I think blacking out your elbow is a lot worse than blacking out your hand personally. I don't know if you guys have had the same sort of experience, but I just remember being really glad when that part was over. It needs touching up as well, which is really annoying, but quite a lot of areas of a blackout do. Like, if you've seen any of my other videos about blackout tattoos, then you'll know that, in all honesty, things like this don't just take one pass. It is probably going to take a couple of goes at least, and especially in some areas it might take even 3 or 4 goes to get it completely 100% saturated. I think the inside of my elbow was slightly more sensitive than the outside. I think the outside is worse noise-wise, but the inside is a lot more sensitive and stingy. And I just remember, because obviously you open and close your arm all the time, like when you're doing things, and I just remember walking around being like this, being like, I just didn't want to bend my arm because it just stung a lot. I remember not enjoying that, but that's another area that I do want to go over again. But you can kind of see here where he stopped, so obviously he did it round here, so you can kind of see a line, which is really, really annoying, which is probably another reason why it's better to do it in smaller, like in fewer sessions. But you live and learn, so learn from my mistakes and just try and smash it out in a couple of sessions if you can. So then next came the moon on my fingers, the first pass for that, which was quite disgusting, I'm not gonna lie. It's in between here, the finger webbing, that's dirt. The rest of it isn't actually too bad. It was more the positioning, because where obviously he had to try and get a perfect moon on my fingers, and my fingers are quite bent, like you can see how like not straight my fingers are, and I've got gaps and stuff, which probably didn't make it any easier. It was just such a nightmare to try and get in, and you know, sit in trying to like bend your knuckles so you can get in all the creases and stuff. It was more of an awkward tattoo than anything, but the finger webbing, I remember that hurting. That for me hurt more than getting, because I had that done at the same time, which is also rubbed off. But I found getting the insides of my fingers was nothing compared to the lower bit of my finger webbing. The top bit here was fine, it's down there is so sensitive. But so that was next, as well as my little Stay Sharp barber tattoo. If you're a barber, you've kind of got to get a barber tattoo. I don't know why we do it. I don't know anyone that works at an office that gets an office chair tattooed on them, but apparently in the barber world, we have to get a razor tattoo or some scissors or something like that. So that was mine, my little tribute to my job. So once, obviously getting that done was absolutely fine because I'm used to now getting solid blackout, and my hand was in agony. I remember going to work and I had to wear a glove because obviously, again, being a barber, it was just such an absolute nightmare. So I tried really hard to look after it and I was really careful with it, and it just still came out loads. So I already knew that my fingers were going to be a nightmare. So I would say, if you're going to get your fingers tattooed and you're going to get them like heavily saturated, be prepared to do it a few times, and also be aware that if you're in a job where your hands are in water, or your hands are, you know, if you're into construction or something like that where your hands are being rubbed constantly, it is going to fade a lot more. I was looking at my arm and I was feeling like it was starting to really get there, like especially if you're just wearing a short sleeve t-shirt, because it's only really the upper part that I had left to do. Now, I only did to just above my elbow when, you know, I got to here. I then only did a small chunk to where this line literally sits perfectly here with the rose, and I just wrapped that bit round. It was quite cool actually, because I actually sort of had a bit of a bicep for like the first time in my life, so I quite enjoyed that. But in terms of the healing of it, I found it was still absolutely fine. To be honest, I think the upper arm was better healing than the lower arm, just because the lower arm, you're knocking it all the time and you're rubbing it against things and it's just touching a lot more, whereas your upper arm is kind of just chills there, it doesn't really do a lot. So I found that to be a lot better. I decided to get my little plague doctor, which I knew I wanted in the sleeve somewhere, but you know, I'd kind of got to this point now, so I was like, oh shit, I should probably put that in somewhere, so it went at the top, because it wasn't very well planned. Well done me. And then I was also looking at it, and what I was realising was I had one tattoo on the outside, one tattoo on the inside on my lower, like my forearm, and then on my upper arm I had one tattoo on the outside and one tattoo on the inside, and I just felt like it was a little bit too like they looked stuck on. So I was like, shit, what do I do? Because I only had then this tiny little space here, and it was after he'd finished the plague doctor, and I kind of expressed what I was thinking, and I sort of came up with the idea then. I was like, well, why couldn't I have a rose here but make it split, so half of it is positive and half of it is negative? Now, he was not at all convinced by this idea, and he thought it was going to look really crap, but obviously it was my sleeve, so I wanted it done. And it's actually one of my favourite parts of the sleeve now. Like, the white work needs doing again on it, but I think it looks really, really good, and I'm actually really happy with it. Once I had the plague doctor and the rose put into my arm, I then went for my next session, and I got all the rest of the black, like in here and all up here. I got the rest of all that black done, just to sort of like finish it off. And at this point I felt like I pretty much had the sleeve done. The only bit that was left obviously was to then bring it onto my chest and do the armpit. Now obviously, as you can see, I still haven't done the armpit, but again, in terms of that healing, it was literally fine, because you don't really rub the upper of your arm. The only bits that I find really horrendous for healing in the blackout is like properly in the pit, like disgusting. And I then did the second load of white on the anatomical heart on my arm, which got it looking pretty crisp. So it could probably do with one more pass, but I'm still quite happy with it, because even years later it is still readable. And then on my last session, and I got the second pass on my fingers. I got my shoulder filled as well as the piece on my chest done as well, so then I felt like I finally had my completed sleeve. Now my fingers then had a third pass later down the line as well, but you know, as you can see, it still needs another pass on that, and there are a few areas in my sleeve that still need to have another pass. I'd say the overall experience of getting it done was a lot more brutal than my other sleeve, which is nowhere near as heavily saturated in black. The healing of it was a lot worse. It swelled up a lot more. It gets a lot more hot in the sun, and you can't see when it's burnt. So it just basically starts to flake, and it only takes like an hour to literally burn. Whenever I get like a spot, or like I had a rash at one point on my body and I couldn't see if it was in this sleeve because it was jet black. So there are quite a lot of things that you don't really think about before you get it done, and stupid things like when you go and get a blood test done. Like, you know, if you've got someone like quite well trained, and obviously, you know, they do it by feel, but every nurse has always made a comment to me being like, oh, you know, we'll use the other arm then, but then they look at the other arm and realise my elbow's pretty much black in there too. But I think it is a bit more of a commitment than just having a normal sleeve, because it takes a lot longer to do. It takes maintenance to do it. Like, you can't just get it done in one pass. You'll need bits of it topped up, and he needs to be a lot more careful with it in the sun and things like that in the summer months. Again, overall, I absolutely love it. I wouldn't change it at all now, and well, that's why I'm halfway through blacking out my leg now as well, in between my tattoos. But yeah, it is definitely one of my favourite pieces, but I think that it's something that you should really think about before you get done. If you have any questions or anything that I haven't answered, pop it in the comment section below and let me know what you guys think. And remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.